All right. Are you about good to start?
We are ready to start, sir.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. Glad you could make it to our meeting today. Unfortunately, we're not in San Francisco. I was just lamenting to someone a while ago that we weren't able to be there in person, which is one of my favorite places to go. So we do have a really full agenda today for our working group and some important announcements. And so we're going to just jump right in with our first presentation. Our first three presentations actually, and then we'll get to some comments by our SWOG VA community advocate Bruce Wright, and some accrual data, and then some working group updates. So we're going to start right out with what's the new VA Central Research Privacy Board. And our presenters today are Michelle Cristiano, who's the ORD Privacy Officer and the administrator of the Privacy Board. And she's worked for over 30 years in different roles in clinical research and human subjects protections and privacy in the federal sector, as well as academics. And also Karen Jeans, who is Director of Regulatory Affairs at ORPP&E and ORD. And I've worked with Karen and I've worked together for more years than probably either of us care to express out loud. But she's a huge help to moving our efforts forward to get more research to the veterans. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I think Michelle's driving this mostly, so I'm going to hand it over to you. And thanks for presenting this for us today.
Thanks. We appreciate being invited today. So today we are going to talk about our brand new VA Central Research Privacy Board. I am joined by Dr. Karen Jeans. She's the Director of Regulatory Affairs, as Dr. Bartlett said, for the Office of Research Policy, Protection, and Education. We're really excited to bring you the information about the VA Central Research Privacy Board because we feel that it's going to have a direct impact on facilitating the waivers of HIPAA authorization for your projects. So can we start with the next slide, please? So basically, there are three primary purposes of the VA Central Research Privacy Board. Our first purpose is to reduce IRB reviews that are only occurring to review and approve waivers of HIPAA authorization for VA research. The second purpose is to facilitate the review and approval of eligible multi-site studies that require a waiver. And finally, we would like to enhance review efficiency for HIPAA waivers of authorization for VA research studies. Next slide, please. Can we advance to the next slide?
Are we stuck there, Tiff, and can you help as well?
Hold on, let me see if I can do something here. Oh, come on. Why can't we advance to the next slide? Oh, I'm talking about. I can't advance. They're not advancing. No, they're not advancing the slides. Yeah. Who's that? James.
And they're asking.
Yeah, this is Karen. I tell you what, can we just go ahead and, Michelle, could you just go ahead and in the interest of time, just go ahead and even without the slides advancing, go ahead and proceed on, and then we can catch up as the slides if we get this technical issue solved.
Absolutely.
That
Okay, great.
great.
Thank you.
No problem. So the implementation of the VA Central Research Privacy Board has actually been in the works for some time. So the Central Research Privacy Board is part of the VA Central Office Human Research Protection Program. And the Central IRB, as most of you know, was established in 2008. And ORD established the concept of the Central Research Privacy Board in January of 2020. I was very excited to announce that we officially launched the Central Research Privacy Board on April 1st. So we have some information that we'll get to later in the slides for you, and you can see the website to gain additional information. Great, looks like the slides are back. So let's go to the next slide, please. Fantastic. Our first topic today lays the foundation for any privacy board. So the HIPAA privacy rule limits authority for only two types of boards or committees to grant a waiver of HIPAA authorization or an alteration of HIPAA authorization. Those two boards with this authority are institutional review boards, IRBs, or privacy boards. Now, the privacy rule also permits a covered entity to rely on the documentation approval of a waiver or an alteration of HIPAA authorization from any qualified board, whether it's an IRB or a privacy board. We do want to remind everyone, though, VA does not permit alterations of HIPAA authorizations. Next slide, please. So on slide 5, which should be the next one, we've already discussed on these other slides what a privacy board is under the HIPAA privacy rule, but we also wanted to clarify what the Central Research Privacy Board is not. So when we talk about what the CFPRB can do and what it can't do, one of the things that we wanted to be very clear about is that a privacy board is not an IRB. And the VA Central Research Privacy Board does not grant IRB approval for any VA research activities. And a privacy board and an IRB cannot both grant a waiver of HIPAA authorization for the same VA research study. Next slide, please. So at this point, we've talked about the history of establishing the Central Research Privacy Board, and we've told you what all the regulations are for it. We've talked about what it can and cannot do, but what does that really mean to all of you as research team members for oncology studies? Why is it important and why does it matter? Next slide, please. So there are multiple reasons to initiate the VA Central Research Privacy Board and why it's important to you as research team members. So there are some external IRBs that the VA uses, for example, the National Cancer Institute or the NCI CIRB, as well as some of our affiliates IRBs, and none of those do the waivers or approvals of waivers of HIPAA authorization. NCI, for example, does not do those at all. So there are also many human subject studies under the revised common rule that meet the criteria under exempt category 4.3 that no longer require IRB oversight, but they do require a waiver of HIPAA authorization. So the Central Research Privacy Board can also review those project types. Next slide, please. So what happens if your IRB for a record of your IRB of record for a study does not provide that review or approval of HIPAA waivers of authorization? As you can see from the slide here, it's not that big of a deal. It's not a problem if your study doesn't require a waiver of HIPAA authorization. Next slide, please. But what if your IRB of record for a study does not provide review or approval of HIPAA waivers of authorization? Then it is a big deal if your study requires that waiver of HIPAA authorization and your IRB doesn't provide that service. Currently, you can rely on another IRB of record for your facility, and now you can actually submit it to the Central Research Privacy Board. Next slide, please. So what studies are eligible to be submitted? Any of the projects that are multi-site funded by ORD, and by multi-site, that means 3 or more participating VA sites, for an exempt project that does not require limited IRB review. The second is the NCI studies that are overseen by the NCI IRB. And finally, exempt research protocols that don't require a limited IRB review that will be using the VA Central IRB Individual Facility Panel, or the IFP. We also have called that one the Single Site Panel previously, that will launch in fall of this year. Next slide, please. So whenever there are criteria for eligibility, there are usually potential exceptions. So let's review those as well. Studies that may be eligible for an exception are ORD-funded studies involving only 2 VA participating sites. Another exception could be when it's a non-ORD multi-site funded study that are exempt or is exempt but doesn't require limited IRB review, or an ORD or non-ORD funded non-exempt project in which the reviewing IRB is unable to review waivers of HIPAA authorization for the VA human research study, and then others as permitted by the VA Central Research Privacy Board Administrator. Next slide, please. So we've identified the eligibility criteria and we talked about exceptions. So now we're going to turn our focus a little bit to the ORD management and support of the VA Central Research Privacy Board. So we are supported definitely by ORD. We are staffed with one administrator, and that would be me, and administrative support personnel. We meet bi-monthly, and then we'll have ad hoc meetings as needed. We have reviews that are conducted at convened board meetings and also through the expedited review process. We have 3 members on the board. As I was saying, we have 3 members on the board. We have one non-VA member as required by the federal regulations. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the how-to slide. How do you actually get to use the Central Research Privacy Board? So local VA facilities have to enter into a memorandum of understanding or an MOU with ORD for the use of the Privacy Board. It must be signed by the medical center director to commit the facility. That means it can't be signed by the investigator or the ACOS or the R&D committee chair. The local facilities must also revise their local standard operating procedures and policies to use the Central Research Privacy Board. And then all of the investigator submissions will be done using our new system, VAERS, or VA Innovation and Research Review System. Next slide, please. So the pressing question for any review process is usually related to timeliness. So the VA Central Research Privacy Board anticipates that most of the applications for waivers of HIPAA authorization are going to be eligible to be reviewed by the expedited procedure. Each submission undergoes a pre-review by the VA Central Research Privacy Board administrative support personnel, and that's a target of 5 business days. And at the completion of that review, the project will either be assigned to an expedited review pathway or a convened board review pathway. Expedited review pathway, our target is 5 business days, but within 10 business days, and that will depend, of course, upon the availability of the VA Central Research Privacy Board reviewer. The convened meeting will be scheduled no later than 30 days following completion of the pre-review. Next slide, please. This slide actually goes into some of the information that we presented at the launch webinar that we had on April 1st. It also refers you to the Central Research Privacy Board website, and the website has a lot of great information. It has the MOU template, what our meeting dates are. There's actually a flowchart to help you through the process for submission and review. And then if you'd like to go back and listen to the webinar launch that we did on April 1st, you can click on the second bullet there that takes you to where all of our ORPP&E hosted webinars are. Next slide, please. This is the information for me, so you can contact me directly, or you can contact the Central Research Privacy Board at vacrpb@va.gov. Next slide, please. And here are some additional important links just to reinforce the website for the Central Research Privacy Board. We put a lot of time and effort into that, and we want to make sure that it's a great resource for you. If you go to the website and find that it's not providing the information that you need or feel that you need, please feel free to reach out to me directly at the contact information provided on the slides. I've also included the VAERS live site. For those of you who haven't set up a shortcut yet or added it to your favorites, you can click on there and do that. And we also included the information for the training environment, or what they call the sandbox site. Next slide, please. And I believe we have a few moments for questions, but I'm not sure.
Yes, we do.
Great.
Yeah, so does anybody have any questions for Michelle or Karen about using the privacy board? I have one, related to kind of how we work. with the NCI Central IRB, because we're going to have a lot of studies that are done, you know, at many of the locations. So what would be the best way for us, say, for instance, there's this new lung map trial, 1900E. Hopefully a number of VAs will be wanting to open that trial at their facility. What's the best way for us to like get that trial to you guys and then allow all the different sites that have, you know, signed the MOU be able to use that waiver for screening?
Right. So one of the things that has to happen is each site has to submit individually. It's not set up like the central IRB model is, where, you know, we have the lead site and then we have the individual sites, the local site investigators that come on. The plan for us to manage those reviews under the Central Research Privacy Board is that the same reviewer will be assigned to it so that the review can be consistent across all the sites and will be hopefully much faster that way as well.
And is that, well, I'm just wondering, just kind of from the central point of view, I mean, would it really be that different between one medical center and another?
We really don't anticipate it being that different, no.
Okay.
Jean, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Oh, no, I mean, I think this the whole thing, and I think what I want to emphasize to this group is this is the first privacy board VA has ever had. This is pretty cool stuff. This is like major innovation in trying to implement it. So some of these things that, just like what Steve brought up, you know, we're evolving, and as it goes into practice, we'll modify our practices as we go. For this group, I mean, what we hear a lot of complaints of from IRBs is they really don't like having to, you know, solely see a study, whether it be exempt. For example, if you're doing a study of looking at different research questions related to, you know, different patients with oncology, different cancer disorders, to do, you know, or whether it is the NCI studies where, you know, they're solely looking at it for the purpose of doing a waiver of authorization. And so that's how this whole thing originated, was because we were hearing so many complaints, and some of our VAs that use affiliate IRBs, they charge every single time an action goes through. So this is a free service. So, you know, we want to do everything we can. And also when it comes to like what Steve was talking about, you know, once the privacy board reviews it, you know, there's going to be little, if no variance between the waivers from, you know, like, for example, 16 sites, 20 sites, 80 sites. So it allows for a very rapid approval by the Central Privacy Board when that study comes to that. So we're evolving as we go. We will see what happens, but we're really glad that you're letting us talk to you today about it. We're real excited about it. And Michelle has done a tremendous amount of work to get this up and running. It is not a small feat.
No, as going back to the days of starting the central IRB, just knowing kind of what was involved with that, I totally understand. And, you know, definitely appreciate this effort, and definitely encourage every site and anybody you're talking to in the VA to get your MOU in process so that you can use this and kind of ease that screening thing. Because I know some sites created like a screening protocol to help ease this waiver burden, but this, I think, really eases it much more than that and much more straightforward. Any other questions for Michelle or Karen?
It looks like one popped up in the chat about who initiates the MOU and SOP process.
Yeah.
So that's really initiated by the institution. It's been the ones that we've processed so far coming from the research office. And one of the things that we asked for the MOU, and it's actually outlined in the SOP that's on the Central Research Privacy Board website, is that they'll need to identify a local site liaison to kind of serve as that boots on the ground or the local point of contact for the MOU and for any questions that the Central Research Privacy Board would have between the facility and the privacy board.
Yeah, and I guess I'd suggest that since this is really important to our efforts, that the local oncology team may be the one that needs to kind of get the ball moving in that direction and let your research office know what needs to happen and why it needs to happen. And I know with the NCI Central IRB process, that wasn't always easy, but this seems a whole lot easier. You know, it's all in-house and it's an MOU. I'm going to assume not dissimilar to the MOU they already have with the Central IRB.
That's correct. It's very similar.
All right.
Michelle, have people accepted this process, you know, broadly at the R&D level, a local R&D level?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
I'm just wondering what your reception has been when dealing with the local IRBs, local R&Ds, excuse me.
So far, it's been positive. We haven't had a lot of questions yet. It's a fairly straightforward process, and I think the SOP and the website have made it's as clean as we can get it. We have had some folks who have said, you know, we have a great process that's working for us. We don't want to change it. And no one is required to use the Central Research Privacy Board. And like Karen said earlier, there's no fee to use it. So for us, it's just there to help facilitate and to make it better for everyone involved. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and this is out of ORD, but it's with the blessing of the National Privacy Office as well, I'm assuming.
Yes, we've worked hand in hand with VHA Privacy, Stephanie Griffin and Kim Murphy. And they've been fantastic about providing support and input to us as we develop the process.
And Oro as well. This is Karen. I want to emphasize that Oro, this is, yeah, you got to say it, okay? But Oro is involved. There's no problem. And again, we're making this very easy to do. The MOU process takes a day. You can actually start using the privacy board before, you know, your SOP is, quote, done. It's not the same process as using an IRB. Because it is about trying to get things done as rapidly as possible to make your lives easier. And that's what it's about. We've got to reduce the bureaucracy that's involved with our approval processes. So we're learning as we go. And we've tried to make this extremely painless, but also very much recognizing time is a commodity that we don't want to waste for all of you as researcher and study team members. So we are hearing you loud and clear here in central office.
Terrific. Any other questions for Michelle and Karen? Well, terrific. Thank you guys again for, well, one, for standing up this effort and to you for presenting to us today. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to jump on this as quick as they can and where they can get their local facilities to agree to it. So.
Thank
all
you.
right.
Thanks for having us.
Mr. Williams, are you ready to go? I see you've joined. Do we have anybody else from the Research Support Division?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Dejan Williams, just doing a mic check.
Oh, great, terrific. Yeah, could you go ahead and introduce yourself and whoever else on your team is going to be presenting today, so that I know you have quite the team there, and I want to be sure we don't exclude anybody.
Sure. And they may be joining in a few minutes. I believe they were going to join at about 2 o'clock. So if you can.
Well, you know, we can hold on, and actually, I can use this 5 minutes to maybe make a major announcement about our group, if that's okay.
Sure. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. A few minutes ago, I received a text from Dr. Blanky, and we are now no longer the VA working group, we're the VA committee. We've been promoted to full VA committee status, and all the things that go with that. I think Connie and Leslie can tell us.
Congratulations, great news.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us more about what that may mean for us. But I think it does mean some.
It means
More
recognition
support.
of all your work. Great job, you guys.
Yeah, apparently it was a unanimous decision. Connie and Leslie, who's our new navigator in the SWOG Ops office, who I probably failed to introduce, which we should probably do now. And Sarah and I put together a package for Dr. Blanky to present to the Board of Governors today. And it was a unanimous vote to make us a committee based on our accomplishments. So Leslie, could you introduce yourself? I'm sorry, I just totally neglected that by jumping in so quickly, everything, so.
No problem at all. I like to stay in the background a lot. So, I'm Leslie Weisenstein. I've been with SWOG for several years, and Tiffin has recently changed departments, and so she is now working to support our meetings department. And so I've taken over some of the responsibilities for the VA support person, and I'm very happy to do so. I'm learning a lot, and this news Steve just gave is just very exciting. This has been a long road, and I know this was being worked on and attempted well before I came on board with them. So congratulations. This is great news.
Yeah. And Connie's really was a key proponent in helping us push this forward. So we're very excited, although apparently it means more meetings as part of the Board of Governors. So.
Yeah, you just became a lot more important, and yes, I think you're going to have to be a little bit more involved now.
All right. Yeah, let's see. I want to give the research support guys, an opportunity to get on. Anything else that we can just mention here quickly? I think just one other thing I'll mention quickly, since we still have a couple of minutes. And I don't think Jessica joined us today. Jessica O'Donovan from Dr. Rose. Do you know if she was going to join us today or not?
Who?
Jessica.
Sorry, I missed. I assume.
Oh, she's out.
Oh, she's out?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to have her mention about LungMap. I was going to have her mention about LungMap because there was a recent change in that study that I think is really going to help out VA accrual, in that we can now use the Foundation 1 results for enrollment. And that's since a lot of places in VA definitely use that, that should help in accrual to LungMap for VA. So I thought that was really good news. So anybody else have any more information on that? Because I was just sitting in on the LungMap meeting and heard that. That's all I heard.
This is Andrea. Was listening to the SWOG meeting. I did notice that one of the top VAs accruing to LungMap is a VA, the West Haven site. So
yeah, that's Jessica's site. So
right.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have her talk about it.
Yeah, but it's nice that a VA is in the top tier of a big study like that and gets that recognition too.
Yeah.
So more
Yeah.
kudos to the VA.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think all the lung studies are great for the VA. So I think any site can beat West Haven. So it's not, everybody's welcome to beat West Haven. We're gonna have number one of all the enrollments to lung cancer study and SWOG.
Healthy competition. Yes.
That's great.
You have set a very high bar. Not easy to get to that.
Perfect. So it looks like our research support folks are all here now. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Williams, and thank you for presenting this to us today.
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon again. Thank you, Stefan and team from the Southwestern Oncology Group. We appreciate the invite and the opportunity to kind of share some awareness of our group within the Office of Information Security, within the System Security Support. Again, my name is Dejon Williams. I am the Supervisor and Program Manager for the Research Support Division, and we're here today to provide an overview of the specific information security and cybersecurity support services that we provide at the enterprise level for the VHA research and development staff and stakeholders. Today I have with me Ms. Carol Johnson. She's a subject matter expert within the Research Support Division. I also have Mr. Terry Peters, who is also a SME, and also Kevin Ester as well. Next slide. All right, so today, within the next 30 minutes, we will be providing a comprehensive but high-level overview, again, of the specific Research Support Division program, kind of provide awareness of the driving business and security factors that we've aligned our security program in accordance with, and we'll be providing a deep dive into the specific functional service support areas that we provide to the research and development community. We'll also be providing some insight into a task force that we launched over the last summer. Again, that's the Research Information Security Task Force. And lastly, we will be providing awareness of enterprise resources and references that are at the disposal of the research community to use to kind of help them and provide them with opportunities to leverage cybersecurity services. Next slide. All right, so regarding the scope of the vision, our mission and vision and scope, again, who are we? We are a group of dedicated cybersecurity specialists and information system security officers. We've been created and established to support, again, provide dedicated support to the research and development community by providing, again, enterprise cybersecurity and information security guidance. We help to provide the community with approved, secure solutions to help them move forward with their research and development objectives and requirements. Regarding our vision, again, we're a dedicated team that provides a certain level of cybersecurity services and support to any stakeholder who are currently participating in VHA research and development. Again, we help the community, not just the principal and investigators, but the research staff, the institutional review board committees, the research and development committees, with understanding, how can you comply with security, but still enable your research product or research project or research study. Again, our scope is at the enterprise level, and that we support at a broad level all of the 110 approved and accredited research and development facilities. Again, kind of really scoped and focusing on principal investigators, the research staff, the research service, but also that area of responsibility also is inclusive of the facility as those, the field, the boots on the ground, that also provides dedicated support to the facility employees and stakeholders that perform research. Next slide. So what are some of the business drivers and what are some of the security drivers that we've created and established our program around? We've been made aware with the inception of this program of the specific mission and the focus area of research. And we've aligned our security services around that mission statement, which is, again, focusing on those key strategic priorities. increasing veterans' access to high-quality clinical trials, increasing the real-world impact of VHA research, and lastly, putting VA data to work. From a security driver perspective, again, we're focusing on providing implementable and practical secure solutions and processes to protect veteran data, veteran subject data, and research data. We're also aligning our program with protecting some of the unique and challenging requirements with research scientific systems that are used in biomedical labs across the VHA research enterprise. We focus on identifying high-risk activities within the research environment, developing risk management plans and responses to mitigate those risks, while ultimately enabling the research objectives, the research requirements to advance. And again, lastly, we want to ensure, and what's critical for us is that cybersecurity remains a critical enabler for research needs and requirements, and ensuring that there's an adequate balance between the incorporation of security requirements within research projects and research studies. Next slide. All right, so at this time, I wanted to also provide an overview of the key functional support areas that we provide at the enterprise level. Right now, we provide dedicated policy support and compliance support for the research and development stakeholders. For example, we provide dedicated Information System Security Officer, or ISO, support for the institutional central IRB process. We also provide guidance, we provide consultation services to the field, the ISOs, the PIs, the researchers who are engaged in studies and clinical trials that are approved within those boards. We also provide dedicated cybersecurity guidance requests through what we call a request for information. And again, we partner and we've collaborated and provided support to the Office of Research and Development to help ensure that policies are in alignment with the VA directives and required security handbooks. Most recently, as I mentioned, we established a Research Information Security Task Force. That task force primarily helps to address systemic enterprise research information security, identify gaps and non-compliance as observed by the Office of Research and Oversight. We've worked over the course of the last year to partner with ORO and the Office of Research and Development and the Office of Information Technology to establish a dedicated Research Information Security Task Force to bring forth implementable, recommended approved solutions to help researchers and research community advance their projects and requirements. We also provide dedicated support for major applications. Again, these are systems that the researchers use in their day-to-day services to collect, to process, to store, to transmit data. We provide dedicated support to the system owners and business owners of these systems to ensure that those applications, those software are approved for use within the VA environment. We've also recently established a new pathway for scientific devices that I mentioned to go through what's called an enterprise risk analysis that we'll provide more information a little later in this forum. But again, these are all pathways and services that ultimately help to enable the research mission and the research requirements. Lastly, the training and awareness support line. Again, we provide dedicated training and awareness. We do dedicated outreach, customer service, customer support, collaboration initiatives. We also provide and develop customized role-based training for the field. Again, when I say the field, we're really talking about the researchers, the information system security officers, and the research staff as well. Next slide. All right, a little bit more insight into the task force. Again, it is authorized by senior executive leadership, both within the Office of Information Technology and the VHA as well. Again, what was the driver for the establishment of this task force was a 2018 joint vulnerability, research information security vulnerability that was signed by both the executive leaders within ORO and the executive leaders within ORD. Again, the objective within the task force is to focus on some key systemic areas of non-compliance and vulnerable areas, to include the use of specialized devices that are not in alignment with the VA's configuration baseline. It's the storage, processing, collecting of sensitive data on non-OINT devices. It also includes the use of non-VA networks for storing, processing, and collecting research data. So again, the task force is really scoped and focusing on looking at these key systemic areas of noncompliance, and as an outcome, developing some key practical, solutions, recommendations, and mitigating responses to help ensure that the research activities can proceed within the alignment of defined policies and handbooks within the VA. Next slide. All right, with regard to the overview, again, I just really hit on the collaboration. Again, we appreciate, we continue to look forward to work with our partnerships across VHA, specifically with the Office of Research Oversight, the Office of Research and Development. Again, we're focusing on ensuring that we protect research data, veteran subject data, but we also take into context the unique use of research data within the environment, not necessarily to hinder or to confine the use of that data for research purposes, but to ensure that there's a balanced approach to incorporating security requirements in accordance with policy. Next slide. All right, at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Terry Peters to talk about our policy and compliance service support line. Terry?
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Terry Peters. I'm, again, with the Research Support Division. Going to kind of cover some of our services and functional areas that we do cover. One of them is, we do provide IRB and RNDC, Research and Development Committee, information security reviews. We do a centralized security reviews, for the central IRB. We have also assisted with other IRBs, such as the Navigate studies. We also have conducted, central security reviews for those as well that are going to the NCI IRB. And we've also, as well, in certain, when necessary, we during the COVID, we also assisted with providing a, centralized security review for those priority COVID-19 clinical trials. Several of those were vaccine trials, and others were therapeutic trials that were being conducted. We also have the electronic data transfer request tool. What this tool is when you have research studies that are, you have external sponsors or collaborators, and the study is going to be sending data to them. This tool allows ISSOs to send those web addresses to those websites, and then we verify that data is encrypted in transmission with FIPS 140-2 validated encryption. Originally, this was done by the ISOs at the sites, but it is a little bit of a complicated process, so we centralized it, allowing the ISSOs, taking one more thing off their plates as well. We do also have our frequently asked questions databases on our SharePoint site. Our FAQs address many areas in research, and this is just a couple of them, from IT applications, COVID-19 guidance, research scientific computing devices, sponsor provided devices, research systems, and many other areas. We do review these FAQs on a quarterly basis, and new FAQs are frequently created to address issues or questions that we may receive right from the ISSOs in the field, our researchers, research staff, and many of those come to us in the form of a request for information. Our current database of FAQs is currently 524. That kind of ties into our request for information. An RFI is where there can be researchers, research staff, the ISSOs, that there may be a conflict in guidance that they have a question about. They may, researchers may need assistance in study planning, right? Maybe they're starting to want to use some certain IT devices or websites that they're not sure if they're approved. And so we try to assist with those, in that pre-planning stage before they get to the IRB and possibly there's an issue, right? We also work with them on the use of non-VA IT systems, compliance with information security policies, as well as, different IT processes. A lot of times researchers will need to get approval for a new mobile device or a new mobile application, and they'll reach out to us and we will provide them guidance on how to get those approved. In 2020, We received close to 400 requests, and the first 3.5 months of this year, we've already received 157. As far as policy support standards and guidelines, we do have, RSD guidance that we do put out to the field with guidelines and processes, as well as we assist with ORD and other entities with reviewing their publications and ensuring the right guidance is in those. Next slide, please. Now, again, I'm on kind of we just touched on the policy support and central IRB and research development committee information security reviews. One of the things we did just touching on a second ago was Operation Warp Speed, where we provided that centralized security review for those priority clinical trials, and those studies were all submitted to commercial IRBs. We also developed an enterprise research data security plan and guide that supports, the implementation of VHA Directive 1200-01. This enterprise research data security plan, it provides a standard tool and a template that where the IT security of that study is documented, right? It's very consistent, and this ensures the ISSO has the information they need when that study goes in for approval, resulting in less studies getting kicked back. As well as the guide part of that also provides researchers information and guidance in their study planning. Last year, we did conduct security reviews of 101 research studies submitted to the VA Central IRB, commercial IRBs, and the National Cancer Institute IRB, as well as commercial IRBs in support of Operation Warp Speed. We also conduct reviews of data use agreements, multi-site research studies, ensuring the methods used to transmit the data is commensurate with a classification of the data. But another thing, that's our EDTR. Some of the accomplishments that we've had we published the Enterprise Research Guidance for the use of electronic methods to securely obtain informed consent. Again, we had a big gap there when COVID-19 hit, and research study subjects were unable to come into VA facilities. We also published Enterprise Research Guidance for the use of OneDrive for business, as well as research scientific computing devices, a case for governance and framework and life cycle management support. Again, in this right here, our key stakeholders are ISSOs, investigators, AOs, study staff, IRB members, and R&DC members, which runs the whole gambit there. Next slide, please. The Enterprise Research Data Security Plan, again, we touched on, it was, to support compliance with VHA Directive 1200-01. And I want to point out that this was, it was a collaborative effort between VHA data owners, ORD, within ORD, obviously the Office of Research Protection Policy and Education, Office of Information Security, as well as Enterprise Security Operations. It provides a standard template and plan designed to provide, PIs with a tool that assists them in documenting the safeguards for that research study, or that research data. And the guide that goes with that guides them through that process, as well as providing other types of guidance that they may need. The development was for this Enterprise Research Data Security Plan was a response as well to a comprehensive risk assessment that was conducted on protocol data management practices. And it is aligned to the VA and federal NIST cybersecurity framework, as well as industry and academia policy frameworks, and it addresses the inconsistent selection of recommended security controls. It also assists the PI, right, with documenting the life cycle of that data that's used in that research study, and it promotes that standardization of the ISO review of those studies, which is critical. We've had a lot of feedback on the inconsistencies in those ISSO reviews, and so the ERDSP is an effort as well, to correct that. And we're starting to see that now as the ERDSP is being implemented. Next slide, please. The John Scott Hannon Mental Health Care Act, Improvement Act of 2019, it was signed into law in October of 2020. Within that John Scott Hannon Act, Section 705, which is actually the last section, requires the creation of the Office of Research Reviews within OINT. That is the Research Support Division. It requires us to perform centralized security reviews and complete security processes for approved research sponsored outside the department, with a focus on multi-site clinical trials. It also requires the development and maintenance of a commercially available software preferred for use in sponsored clinical trials of the department, and is maintained as part of the official approved software products list. This list is also going to be expanded, right? Not just for, for clinical trials, but, for all software that's preferred for use in VA research. I know a lot of times that researchers don't know what's available to them out there. And this will be very helpful, that you can go in there, see the different types of software, its uses, and see if it, could help in your research study. Another part of this, we're also required to develop benchmarks for appropriate timelines for security reviews. And we are working on that. I know that's one of the big issues out in the field as well, as those timelines for getting those information security reviews done. We did establish a sub-working group under the Research Information Security Task Force. We're currently developing that centralized multi-site clinical trial review process. And this includes, sponsored studies, right? Industry, nonprofit, and federal clinical trials. We're also in the process of developing a software products list. We're working with Joe Holston within ORD to develop that list. And they were also this process as well, this centralized security view for these industry, for these externally sponsored clinical trials. We're going to integrate that within Veris, otherwise known as IRB-Net, so that there's a centralized process for those as well. And another part of the John Scott Hannon Act, which is going to be really beneficial to the field, especially the research community, is we're developing a joint ORD, Office of Information Security Program Guide for research information security policy. We do realize that a lot of these information security policies are spread across numerous publications, SharePoints, and websites, and we're going to bring that information together to kind of, standardize, the guidance that's out there for the research community, as well as for the information security officers as well. Next slide, please. And I believe on this one, Carol, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Okay, my name is Carol Johnson, and I am the SME for one of the pillars, also as part of the Research Support Division. And I'll just kind of go over the functional areas for my particular team. We are responsible for the training and awareness support. A part of that includes the Research Cybersecurity Administration Program, as well as the Research Cybersecurity Remediation Program. We call RCAP and RCRP. And that program is typically designed it's generally designed to perform site assistance visits. So we actually do go to facilities and we look at your research posture, your security posture, and we provide training and awareness and assistance with meeting the security controls and helping you remediate any gaps in those security controls as part of a training and awareness program, so that when you are in fact have an audit, you have a good, stable security program, research program. So that is what that particular functional area is for. I also am responsible, my team is also responsible for the monthly National Cybersecurity Research Teleconference. And that particular teleconference is designed for supporting the ISO community. However, we do have other people attend those calls as well. So we do have individuals from the research and development program attend as well. Particularly it's targeted towards the ISOs and their managers. And during those teleconferences, we've been conducting it for 2 years now. And during those teleconferences, we provide best practices, any changes in research policies, any handbook directive changes. We will introduce that to those teleconferences so that we can provide clarity of interpretation and that type of thing. So we've received a lot of great feedback, and we'll talk a little bit about what's on the horizon to expand that further on. So the also the other functional areas, the VA IT campus and ITWD training program. So we are responsible for developing a number of training programs that assist with research cybersecurity, and I'll talk specifically about those areas as well. We are also responsible for the request for information, just different from what Terry Peters mentioned. Our process is more operational and in focus, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and some initiatives there. Now, also the functional area is the Research Information Security, Cybersecurity Toolkit. Now, this is a toolkit that we've, many of you may be aware of already. We've received a number of hits to that particular site, and it was a site that we've implemented in collaboration with ORPP&E as well, to have that site available for providing some research guidance in different areas of cybersecurity for your research program. So I'll talk in detail about that as well. And then also listed is really the risk management framework impacts, right, for each of those key areas, and where we're supporting that overall risk management framework as part of this pillar. Okay, next slide. Okay, so from a training awareness perspective, the national teleconference that I did mention, again, it is designed to support the information system security officers as well as their managers for those individuals that are participating in the research and development program, right? And so that it provides security education, again, increased competencies, and also it provides that policy interpretation, gives new guidance and direction when new things come up, particularly during COVID. This was a critical vehicle for getting information out to the local ISOs and their managers in terms of alternative methods for video recording. And many of you probably saw that memo. So we had an opportunity, and we took that opportunity to present that memo to this teleconference as well, and provide some clarity and education as that was happening. And as I mentioned, we do assist with audit reviews and procedures as well, and delivery of value security training to meet the federal FISMA, Federal Security Management Act. Okay, and the link that's provided there is the link to the training sessions, would include the videos as well. So you feel free to save that link. One thing I wanted to mention in terms of what's on the horizon. So we are in the process of implementing a new teleconference. We haven't determined the cadence at this point, but we will be introducing a new teleconference that will be role-based. So it will focus on expanding to the research community, and will include the Associate Chiefs of Staff, the Principal Investigators, IRB, RNDC, stakeholders. So please watch for any email invite that may come to you very soon to launch that teleconference. Okay, and key stakeholders, I think we've talked about many of them are pretty much the same across the board. The information security officers, the researcher staff, as well as, and to include the principal investigators, ACOSs, administrative officers, IRB, R&D committee as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the RFIs, and we talked a little bit about our operational process for RFIs. And so what we've developed is a Servicenow catalog portal or catalog request link, and it's part of Servicenow, and it is part of your IT. You can submit a request for guidance through this portal. We are in the process of user testing for the portal. All the requirements have been complete, and we are in the process of user testing for that portal, and soon we'll be releasing that to the community. It is really a customer facing, of course, Servicenow is the, point of arrival system for taking these types of requests and intake processes. And so we've leveraged that as well, and expect that it's going to be a very good tool for researchers to really get in touch with the RSD team for guidance and those types of things. So we have 4 requests that are available out there right now. And one is where you can request for just policy guidance, general questions about policy guidance. The other one is you may need a agreement review. So typically those are the DUAs. The other request type that you may ask for is to have a website reviewed. As Terry Peters mentioned in his presentation, they do perform electronic data transfer reviews. So there may be a website that's part of your clinical trial or a study that you're involved in, and you want to see if that site is compliant with FIPS 140-2. You can make a request through this portal to have that website reviewed, you and your ISO as well. So that's another request type. And then the other request type is really to provide protocol guidance. So you will be able to reach out and ask for protocol guidance, security guidance, right? And consultation. So just to make it clear, this is not a site where you are going to submit all of your research protocols for review. But if you have a question and you need assistance with security related questions, you can ask for a consultation through this portal as well. And we do ask that you do that in collaboration with your local ISO as well, because we always want to make sure that we are keeping them trained and aware, but just make sure that you're reaching out to them for any questions or concerns. However, if you find that you need that consultation, you have an avenue for reaching the team and making a request for that type of review. Okay, and so what's on the horizon? We are expecting that we will expand on that site, right? Which would include the ability to request a site assistance visit, in addition to requesting assistance for your remedial action plan that's generated to you by the Office of Research and Oversight. And so we are hoping to add that as a catalog item. And in terms of when the site will be fully operational, we're expecting June 2021. So look forward to being able to present this customer-facing tool to the community to kind of bring you closer to being able to reach the team and get your security questions answered. Okay, next slide. Okay, just want to talk a little bit about the toolkit. The toolkit, again, was in collaboration with ORD or PP&E. It was launched. It is on the ORD site. And the toolkit really provides you with a lot of references. And we were hoping, we've received, as I mentioned, we've received a lot of volume to that site. So we find that it has been very beneficial. I think last month we had approximately 500 people go to the site or more. And so we're really drawing individuals to that site. It provides great information, policy guidance documents, webinars, FAQs, bulletins. But not only that, it also provides you kind of a roadmap. Like if you have a device that you want to have approved, it'll give you a list of those devices that are already approved for use at the VA. But if you find that your device is not on that list, it will give you a link for how to reach out, what team to reach out to, the link to have it reviewed, right? That's for applications as well as devices as well as applications. So that's just an example. But it also gives you a link to those systems that have been received, those research systems that have received ATOs already. So if you feel that you think you may need an ATO, you can go to that link and see if there's already been an ATO provided for that system. And if it hasn't, there's a link there to tell you how to engage for intake for an ATO. So it really is a good tool for researchers to, I even use it myself oftentimes. So it's really just a one-stop shop, and it was a great effort in collaboration with the ORD or PP&E team. So we're really proud about that toolkit and proud about that collaboration as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then I'll go ahead and pass it over to Kevin.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Ester, and I'm the System Security Support Pillar SME. And some of the key areas we cover that I'm going to address today are scientific devices and major application support. So below here, you'll see about 6 different services and functional areas that we provide support to. I will actually primarily discuss the first 2 more on the following slides. But for the first one here, we have the ATO sustainment and continuous monitoring. Here we essentially provide continuous monitoring and sustainment support for enterprise level research systems. And again, we'll talk this one out a little bit further on the next slide. Also, we have the risk management ERA support. So this process essentially established a risk assessment and management process to support research scientific computing devices, as well as special purpose systems operational technologies, SPSOT. And the ERA process is really the gateway to add research devices to the VA network, being scientific devices. And we'll discuss this one out on the following slides as well a bit more. But the additional areas here that I want to highlight, they essentially are more of an operational level, but the actual ERA process itself starts the process of having the device go through a risk assessment and then be added to the network, if you will. So that's kind of the foundational piece of the next few I'll briefly mention. So next we have, along with that, from the operational side, we have the isolation management team. So essentially, this is where the team that will actually manage the devices and actually work to develop policies and procedures to have these devices, these scientific devices, actually placed onto the VA network. And they are placed in a secure environment, basically behind secure VLANs, if you will. So we call that RIDE. It stands for Research Isolation Security Architecture. Research Isolation Security Environment. And that's the VLAN, if you will, where we place these devices at. So next we have the asset management inventory side of the house. And essentially this team does just that. So we support the inventory management strategy for the RCD devices themselves, as well as the SPSOT devices. Next, we have the vulnerability management team. So essentially here, we support and maintain effective vulnerability management and strategies for these actual scientific devices. So here, really think along the lines of, patching and providing updates, for example. Next, we have the incident response side of the house. So here, we essentially support and maintain effective incident response. So here, think along the lines of, responding and mitigation to, viruses on the systems, if you will, or maybe the system has an actual attack attempt, for example. So that's really where the incident response roles fall into place. Next slide, please. All right, so as far as the approved research systems and ATO side of the house goes, you can see we have several stakeholders, and a lot of these stakeholders kind of piggyback on our previous slides here. The facility ISOs and network ISMs, system owners, system administrators, the various program offices, ORD, as well as just VA research staff as well. So a few key areas here. So this process basically is to support continuous monitoring for research and development of major applications and systems. Currently, as of 2019, as you can see, our numbers have grown substantially, but we started out in 2019 basically supporting 11 systems that had ATO, and now we're actually up to 28, and I believe we're actually teetering on 29 right now if we already haven't picked up that additional system. So that has grown at a pretty rapid pace. Also, here essentially we are assisting stakeholders with improving the security posture of the local research facility, and as well as providing a greater awareness of security alternative VA-approved technological solutions to support VA research requirements. So we actually manage several high-level ATO systems that you may be familiar with. Some of those do include the Genesis system, that's a very high level, RedCap, VA RedCap, that's pretty common. We get asked questions about that, and also Qualtrics as well for collecting surveys. So you'll see at the very bottom of the slide here, there's a hyperlink as well where you can see a full list of the actual devices that we are currently supporting at this time for ATOs. Next slide, please. All right, thank you. So the enterprise risk analysis, we also call it ERA for short. Here, this is essentially, we're talking for research scientific computing devices. So this really is the gateway for having devices placed on the network. So this ERA process addresses the unique requirements of network connected RCDs, and it enables the VA to essentially, again, it just provides a process and a pathway for researchers and PIs to connect RCD and scientific lab devices to the VA production network. And again, they are added in an actual secure isolation architecture environment, so a secure VLAN. Some of the other key drivers, business drivers, are it allows you to back up critical research data that's collected, stored, and processed on these individual scientific devices to the VA protection network. And I'll go into that one in a little bit more detail in a second. Also, it allows the identification of systems with some similar configurations to be deployed across the VA, essentially to be, a secure, consistent manner. So essentially, if one facility has a device they would like to add, a scientific device they would like to add to the network, and then facility, we conduct the assessment of the device. If we receive approval of the device, essentially, that same approval for that ERA can be used at multiple facilities. So it really lessens the burden on facilities each submitting the same device at their location for assessment. So instead we manage it at an enterprise level, and once the device is assessed and assuming the same configuration is going to be used, that same ERA can be reused for multiple facilities. So it really lessens the burden on the actual individual business owners, if you will. Also, this process, it removes and lessens the need for reliance on external hard drives and thumb drives to transfer and store research data. This goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that there's obviously security risk associated with carrying around a brick, like the brick for external hard drive, toting that around and potentially losing it being stolen. Instead, you can actually have the device backed up on the VA network and hold data and store it on the VA network for backup, if you will. So it's just a much more manner of doing that. It also allows the transfer of data from the research devices to individual research partners via the internet. And of course, that goes without saying, but obviously a proper approved data use agreements or sharing agreements have to be in place for that. And, one example right now, we have a device that they will be pulling information off the device and sharing it directly with NIH, for example. So this link here at the bottom is that's the link to the ERA portal. So essentially this portal has lots of pertinent information to the ERA process. There are ERA user guides that walk you through submitting the documentation, what artifacts you need and all that. There's also some training presentations. There's also links to, on this, this main link, there's links once you attend that or you go to that, that has links of previous training recordings that we've actually done with ORD and various stakeholders across the VA. So you're more welcome to watch those training links and I guess be brought up to speed with those processes, if you will. Lots of good information on that site. Lots of follow-on links once you access it that are specific to the ERA process. Next slide, please. All right, at this time, I'll turn it back over to Carol.
Okay, great, Kevin. Thank you. Okay, as I mentioned, as part of my pillar, we are responsible for training and awareness. So there's been a number of implementations of training courses, one of which was just discussed regarding RSCDs and also ERDSP. So there's been training provided and training has been recorded for the principal investigators as well. There was training for the ISOs as well, but primarily with a focus on the principal investigator role, research staff on demand. So there are FAQs also that are published for ERDSP, and Terry's just done an amazing job implementing and rolling out that program and providing that training to the research staff for your support. We've also developed a number of training in regards to ITWD training. So we have 4 training classes that are out there. The links are provided for you there, and the names of those training sessions in respective time. I won't go through each one of them, but there is training out there available for the electronic data transmission process that we talked about. There's training for those new coming into research environment. And then there's, specifically as we talked about, our focus on ISO training. So we wanted to put that training there so you kind of understand and know what the ISOs are getting from a training perspective as well. And then the new training that was just released is preparing for the Research Cybersecurity Information Security Compliance Assessment. And so that's basically the RCAP program that I mentioned that will walk you through what artifacts we look for and how we help and assist through looking at your program for any security gaps that we can help you remediate. So that training is also available there, so definitely want to make sure of that. And then we also have an FAQ SharePoint site that is also available for you. If you have any question about research cybersecurity, you can go there, do a search on the keyword, and see if there has already been an answer before you send an answer to the team. But we're still always welcome to get your question. And also training on Veris, as Terry mentioned, that's the IRB net. So there is a training energizer that is part, I think that's part of the ORD website. Talked about some of the other resources in terms of directives and handbooks. The Research and Development Committee references there, also the 6500, the most recent version that was just published in February. There's also a framework for improving critical infrastructure cybersecurity, and also there is a HIPAA security rule crosswalk to the NIST cybersecurity framework. So I will tell you what controls are impacted from a research perspective. And then the toolkit, as I mentioned. So I really, really want to encourage you to go to that toolkit if you haven't already. Just the links are available for you there. They'll be provided, the slide, and go in there, take a look. If you have any questions or concerns, let us know. But as I mentioned, as we get ready to launch the new teleconference, that's going to be specific to researchers, right? Similar to exactly what we're providing to the ISOs. Our first discussion is going to be walking through that toolkit. So we really look forward to your participation once you receive those invites. And then you can reach out to our team directly via email at this point. Again, we are implementing a tool that will allow you to submit a request for services, but you can always reach out to our team and for other general related questions that don't fall within those request types. So, feel free to go ahead and reach out to us now until we have that implemented, or anytime you may have a question, we can be here to assist and help you. So thank you.
All right, thanks. We're pushing time a little bit, but if we just a couple questions, if anybody has any for our research support team.
Question.
Okay.
So if we have a divergent opinion from our local ISO, we can reach out to the team to see if it can help us resolve this issue, any issues with information security. Is that
Yes,
right?
Yes, you can. As Carol and Terry mentioned, we have several request processes right now via email, but in the near future, you can also formally make a request within Servicenow, your IT. But yes, you can reach out for any compliance guidance or to kind of help be a liaison between your local ISO and the enterprise team here within the research support division.
That's terrific, because in the past, I think there was some conflicting, I guess, ruling on our local ISO has one interpretation when the national has a different interpretation, and because the local somehow overruled the national and we couldn't get the study open or had issues. So can you maybe put on the chat room the contact?
Yeah, John, this is Terry. I'll post it right now in there.
Terrific.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll get this whole slide set out to everybody on our mailing list, which will have all those links in there as well. So, and so if you have any more questions, either give them to us and we'll get them to the research team, or use one of the many tools they gave you today to reach out to them directly. So, which would probably be the preferred way, of course. But thank you guys so much for that presentation. I think it's it's been another area that has befuddled us over the years, and I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. So thanks again for all you guys that presented today.
Great. Thank you for having us, Stephen. Thanks again.
Yeah, and we in one of our future group meetings, we may have you do a follow-up and some updates as things move along.
We'd love to.
Great. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Schiller, who's going to introduce our next speaker. Sarah, you there? I see her here. I don't know. She's got a baby. She may have had a baby issue. I don't know. So, Dr. Ganti, I'm sorry, I don't have your information. Could you just introduce yourself?
Sure.
And I think Dr. Daly's with you today as well.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on here.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to present this study. I'm Apar Ganti. I'm a medical oncologist based in Omaha at the Omaha VA Medical Center and the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Also, I'm the Alliance champion for this SWOG S1914 study. Megan Daly is the chair of this particular study, and we wanted to talk to you about this study and also how we can help more VAs accrue to this particular study. As you all know, this is for the VA has started on a new program to increase lung cancer screening, and we feel that that we will identify a significant number of patients with early stage lung cancer. And with the VA population, a significant minority of those patients would not be eligible for surgical candidates, and this is where that study becomes important. Can I have the next slide, please? So as you all know, radiation induces immune activation, as can be shown in this cartoon here. The panel on the left shows the tumor prior to radiation therapy, and the panel on the right shows that after radiation, in addition to having some dead cells, there's also an activation of macrophages and cytotoxic T lymphocytes and decrease in the number of myeloid-derived suppressor cells. In general, increasing the immune activity within the tumor itself and the tumor microenvironment, and converting a possibly cold tumor into a hot tumor as far as immune activity is concerned. Can I have the next slide, please? So we know that surgical resection after using a lobectomy is the standard of care for patients with early stage resectable lung cancer. And adjuvant chemotherapy is indicated for patients with high-risk factors such as large size, lymph node involvement. There are studies that are currently looking at the role of immunotherapy in the adjuvant setting. For patients who are not surgically fit because of COPD or not medical candidates for surgical resection, stereotactic ablative radiation is the standard of care. But despite SABR, while local rates are very good, local control rates are upwards of 90%, the distant and regional metastasis rate can be pretty high, up to about 20 to 25%. And adjuvant chemotherapy has not been studied in a prospective randomized trial in this setting. And while there are some retrospective data, including some that we've published ourselves, adjuvant chemotherapy is not typically used following radiation. We also know that there are emerging data about the role of neoadjuvant and concurrent adjuvant immunotherapy in early stage lung cancer in general. Next slide, please. So this was a pilot study of neoadjuvant PD-1 blockade in resectable lung cancer. And this looked at neoadjuvant nivolumab, 3 milligrams per kilogram every 2 weeks, followed by surgical resection. And as you can see in the figure here, there is a significant change in the nature of the imaging studies and also in the resection specimen itself, where you see more necrosis in the resection specimen. And in this particular pilot study, out of 20 patients, there were 10% had PRs, the majority had stable disease. And more importantly, 40% had pathologically downstage tumors. Can I have the next slide, please? So these are early stage studies looking at the role of immune checkpoint blockade with stereotactic radiation. And there are multiple different studies that have been conducted so far. One used adjuvant nivolumab for a year. The Asteroid study looked at a year of adjuvant durvalumab. The San Diego study looked for durvalumab for 6 cycles, and so on. the UC Davis phase 1 study looked at neoadjuvant two cycles and then concurrent and adjuvant atezolizumab for 6 cycles. This was the phase 1 study. Have the next slide, please. So in this phase 1 study, early stage medically inoperable lung cancer patients with tumor diameters of greater than 1 centimeter or SUV max of greater than 6.2 or grade 3 histology were given 2 doses of atezolizumab prior to SAPR, then received concurrent stereotactic radiation and atezo, and then followed up with 2 further cycles of consolidation atezolizumab. In the expansion phase, they had 15 patients at MTD that were treated. And the primary outcome of this study was to see what the MTD for atezolizumab with SABR was. And the secondary outcomes were safety. You have the next slide. So the adverse events, as you can see here, there were not too many adverse events that were unexpected or worse because of radiation. These were all standard radiation, standard atezolizumab associated adverse events. And so in general, this was considered a safe approach. Have the next slide. And this was the response to atezolizumab. As you can see here, there was at least 3 patients had a significant decrease in the size of the tumor and also had decrease in the SUV pre and post radiation therapy. And on the right, you can see some representative PET scans that show the before and after. And the next slide. So the conclusions of this phase 1 study were that neoadjuvant, concurrent, and adjuvant atezolizumab in combination with SABR for early stage non-small cell lung cancer is well tolerated. And the recommended dose for future studies was 1200 milligrams every 3 weeks. And the radiographic PR was 25%. This was prior to the SABR with just 2 cycles of atezo. Have the next slide. So based on this, the SWOG 1914 trial was designed. The primary objectives were to compare the overall survival in patients with inoperable early stage non-small cell lung cancer randomized to SBRT with or without atezolizumab. The secondary objectives of this trial are to compare investigator-assessed PFS in patients with inoperable early-stage lung cancer randomized to either SBRT with or without atezo, and to compare the PFS by blinded independent centralized review between the 2 arms, to evaluate the local, regional, distant, and local failure rates within each arm, and to look at the frequency and severity of toxicities. And the next slide. So this is the study schema. Total sample size is 480 patients, accrual over 5 years. The patients will be randomized to either atezo with SBRT or SBRT. The fractionation is 10 to 12.5 gray per fraction every other day for 3 to 5 fractions. And the stratification factors are local versus peripheral tumor, size of less than 4 versus 4 or greater, and performance status. And the primary endpoint, like I mentioned earlier, is overall survival. And this study gives 8 doses of atezolizumab, 2 prior to SABR, 2 concurrent with SBRT, and then 4 afterwards. And the SBRT arm will just get SBRT. Next slide. So the eligibility, this is a abbreviated criteria, stage 1 to 2A and limited T3 disease. When I say limited, there are no multifocal tumors or pericardial invasion is allowed. And they have to have one of the following high-risk features, either a tumor diameter of greater than or equal to 2 centimeters by CT scan, an SUV max of greater than or equal to 6.2 as by PET, a moderately differentiated, poorly differentiated, or undifferentiated histology. There should not be any evidence of hilar or mediastinal nodes. And then the patient should be surgically or medically inoperable or be unwilling to undergo surgical resection. And they have to have a PET scan within 90 days and a CT of the chest within 42 days of enrollment. Next slide. Exclusion criteria, any prior treatment for non-small cell lung cancer, prior radiation to overlapping fields, systemic immunostimulatory or immunosuppressive agents within 14 days of randomization, including steroids, heart disease, NYHA class 2 or greater, unstable arrhythmias, unstable angina, clinically significant interstitial lung disease, or pneumonitis. The next slide. And this is basically the regulatory requirement prior to registering a patient. One person at the site must review the slides and complete the verification form. So this was the study that I would strongly encourage all of you to participate in and accrue to. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. And Megan, the study chair, is also here to answer any questions if you have it.
Dr. Ganti, that's a great study, really, and I wish we could contribute right now in West Haven, but we are having some issues with trying to get radiation buying in, since we are one of the many VAs that do not have radiation on site. And I don't want to bore you with any of my complaints, because I keep bringing this up at many VA meetings. My questions to you, specifically to the study. So you said stage 2 would be allowed. So any patients that have nodal disease also, like, I mean, because stage 2 would include also N1 disease, right?
No, so these should be stage 2 just based on size. Nodal disease is not allowed.
Okay, that's good. And then and you said in the eligibility criteria, one of the following basically, and one of the eligibility criteria was biopsy. Would you allow highly suspicious lesions that are not biopsied? Because we have those patients that just are so frail and their lung mass is in the middle of some huge flaps, and it's going to be very difficult to biopsy. Would you allow highly suspicious solitary lung nodules to be treated with SBRT on study?
We've discussed this. This is not an uncommon problem. We've had this discussion multiple times with the FDA as well. But the current study does not allow patients without a biopsy.
Okay.
Just
and this
to
is and the other thing is regardless of the PD-L1 score, right? They can participate.
Right, exactly. PD-L1 score is not inclusion criteria for the study.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add one brief comment to your first comment about the challenges of working with radiation oncology at the VA. And I did want to mention that the lung committee has been talking to some of the SWOG leadership about trying to talk to the NCI to make things easier to enroll patients who are having treatment across sites. So radiation at one center, systemic therapy at another center. And so we would certainly like to keep this group posted if we're able to make progress in that area to make that process easier.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of the second bullet point for this agenda item. We wanted to create an advisory group out of our now committee that would, provide a clear definition of the issue, and then develop and propose some solutions to the NCI of how this could move forward, so that we wanted to take this out of the kind of complaint phase and move it into the solution phase. We're looking for participants for this advisory group to put together and have a focused meeting or more, obviously, to address this issue and develop proposals to go forward. Because I think the more solid information we have in terms of data, how this might be adversely impacting accrual and patients and other things will all be of benefit to us to move this forward.
So I like that idea very much. For example, our VA here does not have radiation on site, and as a result, we can't open it at our VA, even though we have a sizable number of patients who potentially would be eligible. So,
right. Yeah, in our setting too, as we here in the Denver area, we don't have radiation in our building. We do have radiation right next door at the university. And then we also have a large clinic down in Colorado Springs, where even if we see the patients up here, it'd be nice if they could get to radiation in Colorado Springs, which has, you know, facilities down there that can provide that would be compliant with the protocols. So we're taking names. And you know,
how frequently will the meeting be, Steve?
I don't know. This is just, you know, in a formation process right now. I think that's going to be up to the group. I think we have some good VA, non-VA representation. I know Dr. Daly and I've been emailing a bit this week. And want to talk with Dr. Kelly, who's chair of the lung cancer committee. And, you know,
I just wanted to have like more really like really true commitment, because in a way I think we're more than happy. I'm more than happy to volunteer, but I participated in many meetings and we haven't made any progress. And so that's the reason why I want to kind of like have a stronger signal that this is going to change with this work group and this meeting.
I'm pretty sure I can't make that commitment. But
you can...
I think we do have some cross fertilization with, you know, Dr. Daly, maybe Dr. Kelly. Dr. Daly, you said that I can't remember. I don't have the email in front of me right now. You talked to somebody, one of the co-chairs of the group, that would be supportive.
Yeah, Dr. Kelly had reached out to the Primo Lara, who's the deputy chair at SWOG, and he had been interested in getting kind of a summary, you know, written summary of the issues, and was going to kind of help with reapproaching Dr. Blanke. I think ultimately this would require having, you know, several cooperative group leaders approach the NCI. There'd also been a little bit of preliminary approaching of some NRG leaders. And, you know, we have reason to think they would probably be very supportive. This, you know, should theoretically be very helpful to many radiation containing studies in terms of allowing VA accrual. So Chuck Simone, who is the NRG chair for this study, had spoken with the lung committee chair for NRG.
I would agree with that.
And Andrea Denikoff and CTEP, and NCI doesn't have any problems with this. This isn't, you know, we're very supportive of this. So,
well, so what the group had been discussing offline was wanting to have a dual enrollment process where there are where a patient can be enrolled under this one patient could be enrolled under two separate sites.
See, that's not a NCI rule. That's actually a clinical trial sort of oversight. There has to be one responsible physician. So you can enroll the patient at one site and then transfer them to the other site. So that's the way it would have to work.
Well, that was where the issues are coming up because of the significant data reporting issues for radiation. And I mean, I'm probably speaking for other people here, but there's a number of issues with you know, a VA that doesn't have radiation oncology enrolling a patient who's receiving a modality they don't have available and having to track down very detailed DICOM images and so forth and retrieve those and be responsible for reporting issues. So at least from the preliminary discussions, that was what we were trying to overcome.
So that sounds more like a IT kind of reporting issue.
It goes a little bit beyond that. It's also sort of a responsibility issue. In many cases, sites we'd spoken to did not want to be responsible for another site's potential deviations.
So couldn't a patient be enrolled at the VA and then transferred to the radiation site for the radiation?
Well, they would be.
That would be possible. In fact, some of the other sponsors, the Pacific 4 study, which is a direct competitor to this study, allows that.
Yeah, but the problem for the VA is really that I think your study, Dr. Ganti, is actually something that can be completely done. That experimental part can be completely done at the VA. We have no problems with giving atezo infusion. if
Right.
we actually transfer the patient out of the VA, they go on community care, and that's going to create extra burden onto the VA finances. And
So then keep them all in house, but then you'd be responsible for getting all of the radiation records.
Right, exactly, and
so
that's what
exactly. So if
That
we
could be
so
different
if, no,
models.
so if we can establish that the radiation is something that is standard of care, and that we will only send to NRG certified places that actually are approved to contribute to your study. And in that regard, for the standard of care SBRT, we send them to our academic affiliate Yale. And even if they choose not to open your study, that we can still treat the patient with SBRT on study. We're more than happy to do the data entry and things like that. I think that if they
Okay, well then you
know
don't
how
have to transfer the
and these are the
patient.
things
You're
that
responsible for the data.
exactly. So so if these data, the SBRT data, are approved from NRG and approved by your study leadership, that we submitted on the DIS, and like we would submit other.
It's actually not NRG, it's actually IROC. NRG, this is a SWOG study. It's not an NRG study. It's a SWOG study. It depends if they have
Right.
IROC.
Right, Dr. Chow, that would be the concept where the VA enrolls the patient. The standard of care SBRT is done at the affiliate sites, most of which are IROC accredited. But
Right.
but that would be the goal for example, the Pacific Force study allows it. The same mechanism that you mentioned. This one does not for now, and we're working trying to get those things sorted out. And Dr. Bartlett, to your point, I mean, I would be happy to help from Alliance perspective or also from a VA perspective as well, if you wish.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I know Drew Maganaki is all in on this as well.
Yes, and Drew and I have spoken a few times about this.
Yeah, and so anybody that wants to volunteer for this, you don't need to necessarily raise your hand right now, but if you can email, we have a group email for us right now. It's called VAmember@swog.org.
So this is Andrea. I just want to be clear that the issue that we have to talk to the NCI about having a patient be sort of dual registered at two different sites, that's just not going to happen. The patient can only be registered to be under one physician at one site, but the system does allow for you to transfer them, so they could get enrolled at the VA for the sites that aren't doing what the West Haven is proposing, transfer them to the radiation site for the radiation portion for a protocol that requires it, and then transfers them back for the rest of their VA care. So that is done at plenty of sites and can be done. This isn't actually a unique VA issue. This is done at community sites all the time. So I think this is very doable.
What is the specific policy that prevents dual enrollment? Because that is what Drew Moganaki has been working toward, because according to him, there's a number of sites who simply are unwilling or unable to enroll patients under the current system.
Yeah, I guess if maybe you're going higher up the food chain, because it's a responsibility for a single physician to have supervision over a patient on a trial, not divided between two, because there has to be one lead responsible physician. So I don't understand how two different sites could have that lead role for one patient.
I think that's why we want to have a working group to discuss it.
Okay, sure.
To see, what could be allowed, or what changes might need to be made, or and for what is currently allowed, maybe develop some guidance for the field to make sure everybody really understands.
Yeah, maybe you need
there's some things you
cases.
can already do.
Right, maybe you need some use cases as different scenarios, because what I hear the transfer thing might work fine. What the West Haven might do might be fine, but maybe maybe for this subset, there is some need for this other dual thing you're talking about, but you'd have to discuss, how you'd have to write out who would be the responsible lead.
Yeah, that would definitely be a change in the paradigm that's currently in place. So,
Has the
but
SWOG
we wanted to,
quick
develop
question.
this group so we can get these use cases and develop some potential approaches, and then have that bigger discussion and change what we can.
Has the SWOG reached out to the VA sites that has radiation facility to try to propose to open this study?
So Jim Ogunaki has been working on that a lot of as part of his Valor study. Those are the sites that he has approached, and he's working on that end.
Well, that could be an issue because the Valor will compete with the stage 1. So I don't know.
No, but it won't though, because these are patients who would not be eligible for Valor. These are patients who are surgically unresectable.
Okay, non-resectable, I see. Yeah, I think it might be best to work on the sites that has a radiation facility within the VA system, so there's not this issue of trying to coordinate dual care outside radiation and so forth.
Yeah, that works for this study, but there's other situations I know that have prevented us locally from enrolling patients that have dual modalities. So again, we wanted to create this advisory group to really dive into the issue and hammer it out and provide some potential solutions of
And you might want to invite somebody within SWOG who's a leader amongst your community and core sites, because again, the issue is the VA issue. It's really sort of sites that don't have radiation, right at their center. So you could benefit from hearing from some of the NCORs that have made this work.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
So Steve, this Mark at Portland, I'm just curious. So if we're referring patients out, if we open the study and we refer patients out for radiation, they have to have the site we refer to. They have to have the site. They have to have the study open at their site, and they need to be IROC certified, right?
They only have to have it open if they are if it's not standard of care radiation. If it's investigational use of radiation, then they would. But if it's just routine standard of care radiation per guidelines, then they don't have to have that study open, but they do have to be credentialed through IROC.
Okay. And is there a central list of sites that are IROC approved that we can look at?
I believe there is not a central list, but if you look at the IROC and look at a specific institution, you'll know whether that's approved, accredited or not.
But my understanding is that for each study, there needs to be IROC credentialing for each study. And it's not sufficient just to be an IROC credentialed institution.
It depends what the study requires. If it's standard radiation therapy that site is given and credentialed for, it just really, you have to look at the protocol section for each one to see what's really needed.
So for this study specifically, do you need a site that's does the radiation site need to be credentialed for the SBRT, or it's not necessary for this study?
It requires credentialing.
I think it requires credentialing for SBRT.
Yes.
Okay, so that means this study has a unique need, so it would need to, yeah.
It is standard of care radiation, but it is, as the NRG SBRT studies, it does require credentialing.
Yes, so that's my understanding from many studies. While you don't need to require the radiation site to open the study, majority of studies do require that the radiation site, despite being experienced with NRG, IROC, or whatever, that they need to have each study needs to have credentialed. They need to be credentialed for it. It would be interesting if the VA could set up some kind of system where the credentialing can be more efficiently done centralized, like, and then you just look at the list, which site are credentialed, and then you send the patient appropriately to that site. That would be something to think about.
And I also am aware that the NRG has a committee, as I've been to some of their pre-COVID, that they actually have a VA military working group that meets actually with the IROC people about radiation issues. So that might be somebody to invite as well from that committee.
Most of the time, those are people who actually have radiation on site, I believe. So Mike Chang is actually on that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Andrea.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah.
So no, it actually West Haven is outside of the club because we don't have radiation on site.
Oh yeah, no, I know, but maybe they could be a
If we
voice.
had radiation on site, we could double our enrollment.
Right.
Wouldn't that
Maybe
be great?
they could be a voice. I'm just saying maybe they could be invited to this special,
Sure,
group here to help sort of, hopefully just because he's in the club, he wants to help his VA colleagues outside of the club.
This is the radiation club and the VA club, so, okay.
Can we bring those clubs together?
Exactly, that's exactly what we need to do. So we'll start putting the names together for this list. Our group of myself, Sarah, Connie, and Leslie will get the names and get this organized and get something set up. So hopefully we actually have some movement heard us, so it's not just another exercise in meetings. So. Okay, so I think we need to move on a little bit. We are kind of running out of time. Bruce, you hung on with us. Thank you. This is Bruce Wright. He's our SWOG VA community advocate, and we are happy to have him join us. I think we introduced him at our last group meeting, and he's going to give us a few thoughts today. Thanks, Bruce.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Wright. I'm the person you've been talking about in the last presentation. I'm a vet, and I happen to be working with Drew Moganaki on his study for small cell lung cancer and radiation through SWOG's S1827 via Judy Johnson from SWOG. So I've discussed with Drew Moganaki, and he asked me the thing he's observed as of being a VA doctor for 14 years about the vet stare. I'm a vet. I can explain the stare to you. That's the case for another day. I fortunately have been brought here via Leslie, who wanted me to talk about my background and what got me into what I'm doing now. So I'll start out because I'm a product of going through the VA system. I came from upstate New York, apple orchards and dairy farms, and through good fortune went to the United States Naval Academy and was commissioned and sent off to Vietnam for 3 tours. And during those 3 tours, I came in contact with a very insidious little thing called Agent Orange. Okay, life was simple. I retired as a Navy commander, and I worked in aerospace on all secret programs, things like the B-2 stealth bomber and other things. Then one day it was time to go to the VA and enter into the Agent Orange registry system, which I did. And the results of those tests done at that time, they discovered that I had not 1, but 2 cancers. Thank you, Agent Orange. Chronic lymphocytic leukemia, incurable and inoperable, and prostate cancer. Okay. At one time, I was a total of 260% disabled. Today, as I speak to you, I'm 180% permanently disabled through the VA system. When I put the prostate cancer into remission via brachytherapy, after 3 years of review, they dropped me from 100% down to 20%, but I still total 180% disability. My journey to receive the benefits that I earned through serving my country took 3 years. 3 years of constant submitting, resubmitting, and finally getting approved for the things I had earned. VA split into 2 systems, the VBA, which is what I was working with at the time. But as a veteran, you need to get through the VBA to get to the VHA. The VHA has always been a pleasure to work with. They're the ones that found my 2 cancers. And they're the ones that understood my fear of what the next day was going to bring. In my zeal to prevent other veterans having to go through what I went through, I made it my life's goal to help any veteran from any period of serving, man or woman, receive the benefits they've earned. To date, I've helped 82 veterans receive the benefits that they've earned for serving their country. It's been often arduous and always a constant learning experience. But the results of those experiences I share with the next one. And my reward is nothing more than the call that says, I got approved for my disability. It's all pro bono. Along the way with my journey with CLL, as I learned more about it, I became involved with an organization called CLLsociety.org. And I currently am on board as a senior support group advisor, a member of the patient advisory board, and the Vietnam and other veterans touch point. When a veteran comes into the CLL Society, they come see me to see what we can do through the VA system to receive their recognition that they often have not received to date. And one day SWOG asked for community advocates applications, and I was recommended through the founder of the CLL Society, Dr. Brian Kaufman. I went through a review process, and the SWOG organization hired me on board. That's not hired. They asked me to become a member of their team as the Veterans Community Advisor. It's been a fun experience, and as I said, I've already gotten involved with things like the small cell lung cancer S1827. I'm looking forward to getting involved with other things regarding VA and how the vets can best work within it, and to also help the SWOG people understand that the VA hospital system it's a teaching hospital system, and oftentimes the doctors are not there very long, and oftentimes the VA in question does not have the equipment, just as you were talking in the previous presentation. And you have to come up with some workarounds to help the vet, or the vet's going to give you that stare. It's not going to go away. We're here. And while I've been told, one of the reasons I didn't use the VA at the time for my CLL initial treatment was because they didn't have the medicines that were out in the general medical treatment world. And the head of the pharmacy said, well, they're too expensive. And I said, well, that's great, they're expensive, but my life is priceless. I offered it up for service, and this is what I get decades later, and I'm just asking for your help. So I'm here to help all veterans and to have a wonderful dialogue with everyone involved with SWOG and everyone with the VA to come together in violent agreement on how to get there from here. Best for the veteran and best for the healthcare system and best for SWOG. I thank you for the privilege of becoming in service to this wonderful organization. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thanks, Bruce. It's an honor to have you, and thank you for your service. And I think all of us here are appreciative of you being able to help us out, and always keep our focus on really what's important here, which is our veteran population.
Thank you, Steve. I look forward to being in a team think because these problems are solvable. They're all solvable. You just have to sit down and come to an agreement, and it can work. I've been the veteran who has forgotten his medicines and gone to visit his son in Las Vegas and had to go to the Las Vegas VA and check in. And so WB forgot the pills, but they took care of me. And you can go across platforms, but you're right. You have to be careful, but don't let administrative hurdles defeat your goal.
Right, to paraphrase President Kennedy, who said, problems are made by man, they can be solved by man.
Yes, I got the good fortune to meet him at the Naval Academy as a plebe when he came and lectured to us a few months
Wow,
before he passed.
wow, that's impressive.
Then I marched in his funeral procession, so he's
Oh,
a near and dear individual to those in the class of 1967 out of the Academy, which is what I'm a member of. And I'm not young, I'm 76 and I'm still here.
I'm glad to have you.
Yeah, it's my honor to have served, and I look forward as an honor to continue serving with all of you.
Bruce, thank you so much for your service, and also thank you what you're doing for other veterans. It's actually people like you, advocates like you, are so critical to educate other veterans. I recently found out that so the whole burn pit issue didn't just start in the Gulf War, it actually started in Vietnam. And I think that there's so little awareness of this issue. And I was wondering whether or not you could comment on that. So apparently burn pits is not a new invention, and there are probably many cancers that are related to the burn pits.
It's always been a thorn in the paw of veterans, because yes, we were burning things in Vietnam to get rid of them, and we were using weapons and equipment that had questionable pedigree, and I find it truly astounding that it's not recognized as strongly as it should be, because what went on in Gulf War I and II, the results to our veterans they're going down the same path they did with Vietnam vets. They just, after the war was over, forget the vet. The vet had to change his uniform in the bathroom of the airport he landed in to come home because he couldn't wear his uniform in public. And so you go forward, and here the vets are saying, I've had this exposure, I had this problem. I've had success. Just to give anecdotal, it's all anecdotal. I have a classmate who was inside the 12-mile limit, and so he got his Agent Orange exposure thing, but he was also time on a refueling and replenishing ship. And if you've ever been on a refueling ship, you live, smell, eat, bathe, drink the results of JP5, Navy Standard Fuel Oil, and other things that are adverse to your system. He, along the way, developed type 2 diabetes, and I don't know what the acronym stands for fully, but DISH affects him that he can barely walk now because his connective tissue at his joints, coupled with type 2 diabetes mellitus, causes him to have problems. And when he went for his VA application for disability, the doctor said, I don't know what this is, so I'm not going to approve it. And he brought in 2 inches worth of data from Google and other places and said, here's the problem. And he taught the VA doctor, the fellow, who's there for a short period of time, this really exists. And he got his disabilities 100%. But that's part of the VBA part.
Right, yeah.
That's the problem there. With the VHA, now we want to take it forward and take care of this. You ask a very powerful, very strong question without a good answer with today. But it's a thing I lament, and I'm happy to work on with anyone, anytime.
All right. Any other questions for Bruce? We can go a few minutes overtime here, so we're going to forge ahead if that's okay. Sarah, is your mic working now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Awesome.
great. I know we're over time, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. So next slide, please. By the way, I'm Sarah Schiller. I work with Steve, Leslie, and Connie on the VA development team for SWOG. We sent out this survey to you a few weeks ago. We had a few objectives. First, we wanted to better understand the barriers to activating SWOG trials and enrolling veterans to trials, especially over the past few years with the unique challenges of COVID. This will help us to identify areas where we need to focus our efforts to find solutions, and also identify areas where we can ask either SWOG or the VA for more support. The survey allowed us to get feedback directly from you, and we're hoping to send these kind of surveys before every group meeting so that we can learn more from you on a variety of topics. So we sent this survey out to the entire working group email list, which is more than 200 people, and we got about 30 responses. So hopefully in the future we'll have a greater response, but we're grateful for those who took the time to respond. Next slide. So these are reported changes in enrollment over time. Most sites reported that their enrollment to NCTN trials has either increased over the past couple of years or stayed about the same. So that was great to see. Next slide. We asked, aside from COVID, of course, what has been the major limitation to enrollment at your site? Major reported barriers were inclusion-exclusion criteria were too strict, inadequate support for research staff, veterans not interested in participating, and available trials not interesting or applicable to patient populations. We hope that our new effort to place VA investigators on SWOG research committees, which I think we're going to talk about in a few minutes, will lead to greater VA input into the development of trials, which will hopefully address the strict inclusion-exclusion criteria and also ensure that we're developing trials that are more applicable to our patients. Other barriers mentioned by sites included local R&D issues, ISO, IT, and privacy barriers, and lack of institutional support from either leadership or other departments like pharmacy or pathology, or an NCI CIRB issue. Next slide. When we asked what further support would be most helpful, the biggest requested support for sites was funding for a coordinator, which is not surprising. Coordinators do all of the boots on the ground work, and they, I think, are the foundation for a strong clinical research program at the sites. Sites also asked for more central guidance regarding regulatory issues, central approval of research studies, telehealth support for research, and efforts to help with local recruitment. So, as we heard from Dr. Jeans this afternoon, we can certainly continue to work with VA ORD and other central offices towards the aim of getting more guidance for regulatory issues. In terms of central approval for research studies, there are efforts underway to perform more centralized review, as Terry and his team talked about, and that will hopefully take shape in the near future. I know that telehealth support for research is something that Dr. Kelly out of the Clinical Oncology Office is currently working on, so hopefully we'll hear more about that, especially in the COVID environment where telehealth is becoming sort of a hot topic. Next slide. Other responses we got in the sort of write in your own response area were broader inclusion criteria, which I think we already addressed, direct funding for local pharmacy support, greater local space for research staff, increased speed, efficiency of local R&D review, and a local LSI or local study champion. So a lot of these you can see are sort of local specific issues that we don't necessarily have the capacity to help with. However, we do have sites that have had good success with getting funding for local pharmacy and had success with getting space and have changed their processes for local R&D review. So if people have specific questions about these, you can feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with a site who's had success and we can try and work together that way. Next slide. So how could we in the VA working group provide better support for enrollment? We've talked about the VA investigator representation, and I think that we can continue to work with ORD to continue to streamline processes. Shared resources and best practice dissemination is something we can aim for on the VA workbench or through other mechanisms, something like a team site or something similar that we can talk about in the future. Next slide. So if you have any questions, I know I went through that quick because we're over time, but feel free to contact me. There's my email address there, and we do appreciate your feedback, and these slides will be circulated so you can take a little bit of a closer look on your own time. So thanks, Steve.
All right, and to just cover right off of Sarah's survey results, we're putting a board together to take applications for VA Research Committee members to represent the VA point of view and maybe impact those inclusion-exclusion criteria that may be hindering us some, or at least bring up the point. So if you would like to participate in one of those committees, you can email us at that same VA member at SWOG.org. And I think we'll just have you put research committee in the subject line. and tell us what you'd like to do, and we'll send you out the application. There's an application process, and we'll have a group review those. What am I missing with that, Leslie, Sarah, Connie? I'm sure I forgot to mention something.
Steve, this is Andrea. One thing I do want to point out since one of the biggest barriers remains the strict eligibility criteria, is I know Chuck Blanke himself put out an email when the more recent ASCO Friends just published their second round of modernizing and broadening eligibility criteria. And since SWOG leadership, endorses the use of these broadened eligibility criteria, which includes being less restrictive on organ dysfunction criteria, opening up to performance status 2, things like that. But I think utilizing those recent publications as part of this effort, I think the timing is really ripe to do this.
Yes, I agree. Anything else?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to say that I we go using knowledge of we made to people from the eye, and you look at engagement and now commit. That's really
I often refer back to like one meeting where there was 4 of us in the room, and way back in the day.
This is Leslie.
Now,
I got cut off and I just called back in case I needed to say something. I'm sorry about that.
no problem. Leslie, do you have actually the accrual report?
Yeah, I think that's on one of the next slides. If we could look at that, and that won't take very long. It's pretty self-explanatory. So next slide, if anybody's manning those still.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can keep going. And one more. We've had pretty consistent accrual from most of the sites that do accrue to studies. As you look through, you'll see that West Haven is pretty much the high one, as it typically is. Considering COVID, the last year or so, we think this is still in pretty good standing. And actually, I kind of assumed when we first ran this that COVID probably was the reason for the higher number. I did some counting and found that wasn't true, that actually we had 36 studies on our last accrual report from the fall. And this time, if you subtract the COVID studies that are included in this, we have 71. And so I think that speaks strongly to the sites that are still trying to register regardless of the situations that are in place now. So I see this as a positive. So otherwise, it's pretty self-explanatory. We're hoping with the survey that Sarah had sent out and the results she's gathered that perhaps going forward in the future, we'll be able to look at how we can support some of these sites that had lower accrual numbers or don't seem to be able to accrue on a regular basis, to see maybe there's some support we could help coordinate with them and give them some more resources in this effort. So.
All right. And then just the last thing to mention, we still have the HOPE integration grants. The deadline for those is going to be August 1st. Just a reminder, we're doing 2 $50,000 grants each year. And so I believe the application is on the HOPE Foundation website, and we'll be looking for
Yes,
those
the application is there, and it's got details and so forth on filling that out. And and so forth. And so you just want to click on the funding information on the SWOG website, and you'll be able to pull that up.
Okay, so considering that we are over, I think we probably need to close this out, but thanks everybody for your attention. And like I said, we kind of did have a jam-packed meeting, which is really good. And as Mikhail said, that it's definitely a difference from a few years ago, and very much appreciated. Christine, you had a question quickly before we go.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much. I have a quick question. Sorry, I was at the myeloma committee. If we have a clinical trial for multiple myeloma, and both SWOG and also the sponsor are interested in including VA sites, how do we make it happen?
Well, I think we're going to have to drill down on that one too. And you say the sponsor and SWOG, is it?
So sponsor is like the pharmaceutical company who sponsored the study, and
Yeah.
also SWOG certainly have been promoting to include a VA network as the participating sites. So I mentioned to our committee that we certainly can consider that, but I think it would be nice to, I don't think we have to discuss today, but if you could please connect me with somebody or yourself, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, I think if it's a SWOG study, yeah, Sarah's right. Go through Chris Akaroff at the Partnered Research Program in the Office of Research and Development in VA, and we can get your contact information.
Sorry, what is the name again?
Chris Akaroff, it's in the chat right now. You can see.
Oh, great. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Again, thanks everybody, and we'll be talking soon. We'll try to have, we will have a meeting between now and the fall meeting, which I think we're still waiting to hear if it's going to be in person or not in Chicago. So thanks again, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.